I'm going to throw this in at the very beginning because of the fact that this podcast just jumps off with a start and we don't end up clarifying much of what's going on. But this is a podcast about the first Patlabor OVA that came out in 1988 through 1989 and the movie that came out in 1989. Those are all you need to watch to listen to this podcast, but you definitely have to watch them because we don't explain anything. We assume you have seen it if you're going to listen to this. And this podcast is to launch a new perspective series going forward of just watching classics and binging classics. We started with something that would be easy so that people can just marathon it and then listen to this podcast. But the next one we're going to do, the next series we'll be starting will be Future Boy Conan. So if you're not interested in Patlabor, but you do want to know what we're going to do next, go check that out. I don't know when we're going to actually record for it, but we'll probably do the first half of the show. So just watch the first half in anticipation of us eventually making a thing about it. And we're joined on this episode by Hero, who has a video called Your Next Favorite Patlabor. If you need to have the franchise explained to you, if you want to know the timelines and all the crazy stuff, which you don't need to know to watch this OVA and movie and then listen to this podcast, but it's a great video. It explains everything about Patlabor and will sell you on it as it did us. So check all that out. Additionally, I have to note the fact that this is not being posted on the KHANTEHNT channel because the KHANTEHNT channel, along with every other channel owned by Best Guy Ever, has been hacked. We are currently working with human beings at Google to try to get the channels back, but for the time being, we don't have access. Also, if you're trying to figure out where to watch these OVAs and movies, they do have official releases in the US. Some of the illegal streaming sites have the wrong subtitles, but you can easily find all of this on nyaa.si if you want to torrent. You can find it with the sub, dub, tons of different language tracks. So, do whatever you gotta do. And enjoy the podcast. Hey, everybody, you're listening once again to KHANTEHNT! Joining me, as always, of course, is Best Guy Ever.
What's up?
Oh, and I'm DigiBro. And we have special guest today, Hero, formerly Hyperbit Hero. Yep. Say hello.
How's it going, everybody? Good to be here.
So I wanted to have you on this because you are a huge fan of Patlabor.
Yep.
And you recently had a video called Your Next Favorite Patlabor, which I think you spent something like a year making or more.
I think I began writing that video in 2016.
Jesus Christ. All right. So 4 years in the making.
It just took me fucking forever to edit and write. Yeah.
I know I've told you this before, but the Your Next Favorite series has been the most consistent, everything that you have recommended through it, I've been like, that looks fucking awesome.
Nice.
And I've checked out a lot of it. I watched the Devilman OVA because of your Devilman video. And now here we are watching Patlabor because I had watched the first 4 episodes of the TV show a few years back, and I was not as into the show. But here we watched the OVAs in the first movie, which are the first incarnation of Patlabor. And if you want, you could break down all the different incarnations, because I know that for people, I think one of the most daunting things for people to get into Patlabor is the labyrinthine construction of its continuity.
I noticed that the movies and the manga and the show each have their own diverse timelines as I was perusing the wiki, which is interesting. And overly complex, but hey, what can you do?
Yeah, I mean, it seems complex before you once you lay it out and visualize it, or once you've seen everything, you're like, oh yeah, that's easy. That makes sense. But so it's like one of those franchises that started where from the beginning they wanted to create a multimedia franchise, so the manga and the show started at the exact same time. It's kind of
really?
Devilman. If you the origins of Devilman, they basically just
Gonagai.
Yeah, Gonagai basically just was like, oh yeah, it was a guy who transforms into a demon, and they're like, okay, yep, we'll make a show out of that. He's like, well, I'm gonna make a manga out of this though. It's like the stories are completely
and they
different
were very very different from one another.
They're completely different, but they were both conceptualized at the same time. So that's the way the manga is. So the manga is off doing its own thing. I forget how many volumes it is. I think it's 20 something volumes, but
okay,
a lot of
I think that's right.
Yeah, there's I think 2 major arcs in the manga, and one of them forms like the main storyline of the television show. Like that's what that's based on.
Okay.
And then the other is about this like giant sea monster, which kind of got turned into the third movie, which we're not going to really talk about today.
Okay.
But
so
it's
that
really
wasn't
weird.
the one sea monster episode that we saw in the
Nope.
show. That's just okay. Just check it.
Yeah. There's actually like several sea monster episodes, even in the TV series.
Amazing.
It's really weird.
Yeah, so
because they don't talk about
so
it.
you've got this. What we watched is just the 7-episode OVA that was from 1980,
89, I believe.
through 9. Then the movie that came out in 89. Just by the way, blew my fucking mind. The movie came out like a month after the last episode of the OVA, so
Must have been
obviously they
working
had
on
to be
them.
in development at the same time.
Yeah.
You're talking about
because the movie is.
You're talking about episode 7.
Yeah.
From what I understand, like they like made the first 6, and then the 7th one was kind of like they had the movie in production, and the 7th one was like to promote the movie almost. So if you notice, like
Okay.
the 7th episode, the animation's like insane in that episode. Like it looks way better than the rest of the series. That's my personal favorite episode of the OVA. But
I mean, it's hard for me to say something like, "Oh, episode 7 looked amazing," because the whole show I'm just jaw on the fucking floor. Like they don't make stuff like this anymore, you know? And for me, as somebody who keeps up with current anime, anytime I step back into the late 80s, it's just like, oh boy, they couldn't have known how good they had it, you know? Like this was not gonna last. That economic bubble was gonna burst. But yeah, this if you like your late 80s OVAs, well, you probably already know about Patlabor if you do, but if you don't, this was the era of like. And I would even say, if you look at the OVA versus the movie, you can see that, like, in the 80s, not only were OVAs just, like, these really beautiful, awesome, action-filled things with, which, by the way, the OVA is made by Studio Dean, who who was badass at the time.
I
All
saw
through
that
the 80s and 90s, they
The
did all
critics always
kinds of
say, like,
fucking...
Team Headset or Team Headrest or something. Is that like the division of Studio Dean working on it or something?
no, so it's Headgear. It's basically
Headgear,
like it's like a superstar team of creators who like came together to like create like an anime union, I guess. And they were like their whole thing was creating like high production value like ideas that they could go to different like animation studios with and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
So Headgear technically has made another series. I think it's called like Twilight Q or something, but
Yes.
it's pretty much Patlabor
Twilight
was,
Q
like,
also had its...
yeah.
Twilight Q is a 2-episode OVA that was supposed to be a Twilight Zone, like, but with anime. The second one is directed by Mamoru Oshii, who directed Patlabor, the OVA, and the first two films, and it's really good. And I think Mamoru Oshii is very important to talk about with this because of the fact that this whole like build a franchise to be expanded on thing. He does a lot of that. Like Blood the Last Vampire was created by him for the same reason, and even though he didn't direct it, he basically assembled a team at Production IG, and they kind of used it as a way of just like the original Blood the Last Vampire film. They used it as a way of like testing out new techniques because it was one of the first extensive uses of CGI in anime, and it looks amazing even today for a movie that came out in like 2000. But you know, it was also like the idea that, hey, we just made this thing and now we can do anything with it, you know. And there's been tons and tons of different shows that have no real relationship to each other other than that they share this IP. But it's generally how Production IG does things. I mean, you've got Patlabor, Ghost in the Shell, Psycho Pass, like they create IPs so that they can have like, you know, the ability to promote new shows by connecting them to this kind of existing known quantity, you know? Which is why they are able to do such, basically able to make such good looking shit, because they can, you know, leverage the popularity of the existing IP to actually, you know, put all that effort in. And goddamn does it show, even in the first incarnation though of Patlabor, which is not even from Production IG, but they did co-develop the first movie, I believe, and I don't think Dean was involved past the first movie, if I'm correct.
I don't think so.
Remembering. So, yeah, and Mamoru Oshii was working with Dean heavily in the 80s. He also did Angel's Egg with the studio shortly before this OVA.
That was 85.
Yeah, so, and he had, Studio Dean's first major production job. I know all this just because I happen to be also planning to make a vlog about Studio Dean, but they first started with taking over Urusei Yatsura after episode 100, which Mamoru Oshii got his start directing on. So it's kind of like him and Dean both genesised out of Urusei Yatsura and did all kinds of interesting stuff in the 80s. And then he kind of seemingly just, I'm guessing through Patlabor, he kind of transitioned over to being a production IG guy, because he was then there throughout the 90s and early 2000s. So but yeah, that's all just fun history. Right. The most important thing about Oshii's involvement, though, is that his directing is so fucking good. His OVAs are so stylish and cool, and like, it was immediately apparent to me that he had directed the OVA, which I hadn't even known before watching it. Or I'd forgotten, I guess. But the very first shot is just a guy with aviators, like, staring into the distance. And that same shot is in Twilight Q episode 2, as well as several other of his films. So I was just like, oh, this is Oshii.
Wait,
like,
do you mean
I love
actually
it.
Literally recycled, or it's not the same
almost
character? Okay.
Not the same character, but almost the exact same shot.
I thought that might
like
have been shared universe, but okay.
With the sky reflected in his aviators like that. And well, anyway, I've distracted you from describing
I'm glad you brought that up. I just wanted to say, from my point, that I totally forgot that Oshii had done all this. But in watching this, it was such an interesting experience, because I think my power level is finally surpassing 9,000 at long last when it comes to consuming animated media. Because I'm starting to do this more and more as I watch this shit, and as I turn it on, I'm like, oh, I recognize like this animation and directorial style, and I'm like, this seems familiar to me. And I look up Oshii, and it's like, oh, of course. And especially with the movie, which came out in &89, like watching Angel's Egg in '85, go to the Patlabor movie in '89, and then on to Ghost in the Shell in 1995. It's like, to me, I'm really feeling like the progression of his work as like Angel's Egg being like so crazy conceptual. He dips his toes into these, I don't know, like procedural cop kind of story. But then like the movie has those kind of weird, trippy elements from his earlier work. And then Ghost in the Shell obviously doubles down on that shit super hard. And it like, for me, the kind of the most enjoyable thing about this was like experiencing I haven't really gotten into this until this point. I'm starting to get enough perspective to really get like a step back, full scale view of like a man's progress throughout his career. And I was delighted as I was Googling Oshii to see what he'd been up to lately. I realized that a new show directed by him is coming out in spring of this year, in like a few months. Yeah. It's about vampires or something, and I cannot fucking wait to see what the hell it's about.
Just got so fucking tight, dude. You have no idea.
I can't wait. I didn't look up any details who's doing it or anything like that.
I didn't have time to, because I wanted to look into what he was doing, but I hadn't had the chance yet. So
he's next season. Hey, next fucking Annie Forecast or Weebcast 2.
He hasn't directed a TV show since like the fucking, I don't know, since the 80s probably. If he has not done a lot of TV shows. I mean, and also I should mention Oshii, basically, like, I don't know if he invented the OVA, but he did make what is considered by many to be the first one, Dalos, in '84. So he's I haven't seen a lot of his 80s OVAs, and now I'm like, I need to watch all of them. Like, what have I been doing?
If they're all
why have I been watching anything else?
Yeah, I mean, it's consistently amazing. And like you were saying at the beginning, just like, it's just such a joy to step back and watch something like this. I mean, God, that bubble produced some great results. They must just imagine the amount of work they must, especially watching the fucking movie, all the detail, like every shot.
The movie is ridiculous.
It is. Truly ridiculous.
There's this one shot where they pass under a bridge in the movie, and it's like, it's animated, the bridge going over them. And I was just looking at it, and I'm like, that looked so fucking hard to do. Why would they do that?
Yeah.
Like, why would you
vision.
Task yourself to animate that?
You just have a vision, and then you throw resources at it until it's done. I can kind of relate with my editing style in some small way, but it's surely a delight to the senses. But we can get to the movie later.
Particularly the cars, man, the car scenes. This probably almost every episode of the OVA has cars getting destroyed or some kind of chase scene. And Studio Dean, not too long after this, in I think '91, they did the You're Under Arrest OVA, which has 4 episodes, which is like all awesome car chase scenes, very similar to the ones in this. So check that out as well if you do like these car scenes. It's also about police, but regular ones, not with mechs.
Well, I mean, the mechs, as you might have guessed, or we'll get to, are almost incidental. They're they're kind of important, but it's mostly about like the stuff you talked about in your recent mech video. It's like the character drama and the things they can do, and like the Babylon Project and all this environmental bullshit going on besides it. But they sure make for a fun, I don't know, eye catch to get you into the series, and it's all great shit.
I think this show might have the least mecha fighting of any mech show I've ever seen, actually. I suspect that the TV show probably has more mech battles, confirm or deny hero. I have not seen much of it. But...
Yeah, it's a lot more like Villain of the Week's type, where there's a new robot and it ends.
This has got to be better. This has got to be way better than that stuff. What's your thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll just say, to consider this, Nate, the TV show is 47 episodes long. So while there are definitely, because I had seen a few episodes of it, and like the OVA immediately impressed me much more just because of the directing style, the tone and feel of it. But I will say that you don't get to spend that much time with any individual character. It's very much an ensemble cast. Each episode is much more plot driven than character driven. And on the one hand, what's most impressive about it is actually just that even with so little time spent with the characters, they can still feel so real and fleshed out. And I kept noticing that this show is so good at introducing characters. Like, when a character makes their first appearance, they just seem like the coolest fucking person in the world. Like, the very beginning, you've got the mechanic, and he's just standing there with his aviators, giving this speech about how he's a gear and the borto guy. And I was like, I love this man immediately. And then, like, Kanuka, when she gets off the plane, and she's got the fucking sunglasses, and you're just like, oh, well, she's immediate waifu tier.
Well, it was interesting seeing Kanuka's appearance. She's a Japanese descendant, grew up in Hawaii. Girl, it's literally my girlfriend. It's just the exact same.
I thought you were going to say something about that.
It had to be addressed. And she looks just like her. What can you say?
But Kanuko's a badass. And then also I noted the scene when the terrorist who's in episodes 5 and 6, when he's introduced in the ramen shop, it's just such a memorable way to introduce him. He just like slurps the whole ramen at once and just like kind of looks to the side.
Scenes like that, they have this. I noticed this in a lot in the show. Great, like long pauses as characters look at each other. That I guess they're like less extreme versions of like the famous Eva scene of just like holding before Shinji crushes whatever the fuck his name is. And they're done with, I don't know, because the whole show has such amazing production every other second. It's like, I know that they weren't just lazy. It's like I actually like that a directorial decision was made to hold on a shot, and I have faith, and I don't need to think that like, oh, it's just due to budgetary constraints or something. They just hold on the shot.
Mamoru Oshii. I mean, if you've watched any of his stuff, it's all very, very slowly paced.
It's
and I'll
wonderful.
warn people, like, we're all like sucking this thing's dick right now, but this is very slow, and I don't suspect a lot of like really younger audiences. I know me as a kid would have been bored to fucking tears.
I mean,
by
you're right. You just have to have literally no brain to not like love the experience of watching this.
Well,
which I suppose describes children. Fair enough. So.
It's actually, I mean, honestly, it can be a little much to follow sometimes. Like, the show does not really repeat itself. It does not try to baby you through its information. Sometimes you even have to kind of read into scenes a little bit, where like something will happen and you don't nobody just explains it. You see it, and then you see the ramifications of it, and then you kind of think back and you're like, okay, that's what that was,
That's true.
Yeah. That's kind of how it is with some comedy in it too. Like, I remember, I think it's episode 4 or 5, like one of the captains, Goto, like there's a part where he's on his phone in a car driving, and then like the scene ends with him with the camera just kind of zooming into like a billboard. And the next time you see him, he's like driving an ambulance, like he jacked the ambulance.
Oh, that's the scene. That was a little confusing there. Yeah.
You see his car you see a car on the ground, and they're like, oh, somebody fell off the bridge, and then we see.
We also see him covered in bandages, so that's how I inferred. Oh, I see. because this was as part of he was trying to like escape from capture at that particular time. So I assume I had to kind of retroactively be like, okay, he must have crashed that to get rid of the car, or maybe he literally just lost track of what he was doing. That's also possible. Don't text and drive, kids. Stay focused when you're on the road.
I think he just crashed because he's an idiot.
Well, Jesus, and I love that he's characterized as like such an intellectual, like he's like the super spy guy, and then he just fucking crashes his car for no reason.
There's even more to it though, because the scene where he crashes his car, I think the reason I didn't assume that was what was happening at first is because he's driving and he's trying to think of like what is the connection between these two places, and the billboard he crashes into is for a cruise ship between those two places.
Right.
So it seems like the scene is just he sees the billboard and it clicks, but he actually drove through the billboard, as revealed.
That's a bit of a dense joke. Very dense. I guess it makes sense. By the way, while we're talking about moments like this, I think the biggest big question mark over my head was in episode 7, where the whole narrative happens where they meet like the second thief who stole the truck, and he actually wasn't like an evil guy, part of the resistance, and he saves now and whatnot. But at the end, like we just kind of cut from like him saving our characters to like a woman and a child in bed, and it's like, hooray, you're okay. And I was just wondering what like.
Okay, so at the start of the episode, the guy is on the phone, and then he like freaks out and he steals the truck. So the reason he had stolen the truck is because his wife is in labor unexpectedly. So he stole the truck to try to get to her as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And so at the end, he's with her.
I tried to pay attention too. This is not. I'm not pulling the digibro right now.
It was hard, dude. I mean, I'm lucky I watched it with May, and she's better at paying attention than I am. So anytime I was a little confused, we could fill in the gaps for each other.
That makes sense. So I was wondering, like, how is this going to redeem a guy who just decided to steal a truck, but he did it to get to his wife and child? Okay, fair enough. But see, that's what this show. It did not revisit those details at all in like the final scene. It expected you to like have gathered that from the beginning, which is fine. I just thought it would have been restated or something. But I mean, it was still very entertaining. So. It was all good stuff.
It's I would definitely call this a high intellect show, and I don't mean that as in like, I'm so cool because I can understand Patlabor. I just mean like you gotta fucking pay attention. Like it will be hard to follow, and it will be boring if you're only waiting for like action scenes. Like the movie in particular. I guess we're just talking about all of this at once at the same time, not really in any order. But since we've blasted off, we're 20 minutes in already. I feel like we just started recording, and I didn't even establish anything. But the movie is probably one of the least dramatic films I have ever seen. Like,
I don't know. The ending gets pretty fucking intense with
the very end, though. Like the last 10 minutes has like a pretty intense stuff, but like throughout it. There's lots of like reveals and stuff, but it's like very procedural. It's very dry, and it almost feels like the story is over until we find out about the fact that the arc can be used as the ultimate weapon. Like before we learn that detail, it seems like we've already opened and shut this case, and we're just kind of like, wow, we just basically watched police do good work, I guess, for a movie.
I mean, that's basically what Ghost in the Shell is too, and I, obviously, a big fan of that as well. In fact, I was gonna say that just like that's the series that feels the most close. Really, sure, it's got cyborgs. It's just a police procedural with a specific type of crime. That's basically exactly what this is, and also we don't really get to know the characters that well. Even less so in this. At least Motoko, we kind of spend some time with in like the manga and know her backstory. We don't spend like any time with most of our characters here. We just see them like at their job doing good police work, god damn it. And then of course there's I forget his name.
Yet, I feel though as though the details we do learn tell us like all we really need to know. Like
for sure.
You got the married guy who's just kind of a simp, and when you meet his wife it's perfect. Ota, who I suspect is meant to be an otaku, and that's why they named him that, because he's like this gun and idol nut. Yeah, exactly. Like he's like a fire-branded. Think about Otaku no Video. Have you seen that?
Actually, no.
I'll
take your word.
Think about Gynax.
I have that downloaded. I was planning on watching it soon.
Oh, you should. You'll like it. It came out just a year after this movie, in fact. But I
I mean, how about like the really big guy who was like, he's like the driver of the truck that ports the laborers around, and like the only bit is one of the episodes, like episode 5 or 6 or whatever, when the team's getting back together for the big mission. He just has his little scene. This was like the best scene he had, where he's in Okinawa and he just says like he's just giving rights to his father and says goodbye to his mother because he's got a job to do. Damn it! What a wonderful little moment for that character. It was great. It's great.
Yeah.
Just a big stoic softie.
I don't even know his name. I mean, most of their names.
I think it's
his name was Hiromi-chan.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Hiromi-chan.
Oh, and we do see throughout the show, like he gets like. He brings in like a flowered lunchbox. Like, man, the other guy's like, I wish my girlfriend made me lunch. He's like, well, this is my lunch. I made it for myself. That's telling. Big softie.
He's obviously a big softie. And then you get the amazing moment at the end of episode 3 where the sea monster has the same face as him.
Oh yeah,
for no
what
particular
the fuck was
reason.
that?
And they just stare at each other. They have this depth of understanding, and then it walks into the sea.
That was fast.
That is an unforgettable moment for sure.
Or how about in episode 6 where like he's the one who basically saves the day at the end? He finally gets like
he grabs. You're right. He does do that. He was fully responsible for saving the world from like nuclear war, basically. Thanks, bro. Appreciate that.
Yeah. He's the most low key badass.
He doesn't even get thanks. There's no moment of like he did it. He's the hero. He just does his job and goes home and jacks off to his girlfriend's her private Snapchats like the rest of us.
Her OnlyFans.
I mean, he's at that $500 a month tier. He's killing it with this relationship.
Okay, so you were comparing, or you were talking about Oshi's like previous work and stuff like that, and how this is very similar to Ghost in the Shell and stuff. So I'd actually really like to see what your perspective is on Patlabor 2 when you eventually get to that, because that's
I didn't know Oshi directed that as well. Maybe we should have watched that too, because I'm kind of dying to watch it.
The reason we didn't. So I realized me and Hiro had talked about like the plans for this kind of on our own at the start, but the reason we didn't include Patlabor 2 is that it is known for being like a very huge tonal shift and being like a way more serious, way like more heady, and like it's much closer to Ghost of the Shell in like it even looks like a Ghost of the Shell, like the color palette and everything.
It's basically like the Metal Gear Solid 4 of the series, where it's like everybody's old and like done with this shit. It's their like final hurrah type thing. So like I wanted you guys to go back and like at least with this timeline, where it's the OVA, first movie, second movie, third movie, that forms that first timeline. At least get their origins so that you could appreciate the context in the second movie for how much they've been through and how much they've had relationships with each other.
I kind of got the sense from you that you felt like the second movie could have a podcast to itself, and that's why we needed to kind of keep it separate.
Yeah, it could definitely. Yeah. So
well, hey, the first movie, I definitely felt. I mean, just by what did you saying, I felt like the tone compared to the show, the tone got way more serious, in my opinion, in the second one. And like the narrative that they planted the seed early on in the OVA of like, what is it, Beach House, and how like the Babylon Project, which I immediately was like, okay, this is going to be the real plot, this like land reclamation from the sea and whatnot, and this is going to all the terrorists and stuff, which obviously pop up throughout the OVA. But like it seems to me, and this isn't even clarified in the movie necessarily, but like the plot that is going on is obviously like the Babylon Project is kind of finally a big climax is happening with that, usually with the Ark and that particular situation that happens, and like the one guy who like I suspect is a member of Beach House and is part of this resistance or something, but it's not proved. That's not like clarified anywhere. He might just be another separate, I don't know, entity. And it doesn't matter if he's part of the group or not.
We're just
but
crazy.
Like I'm dying for more information on, what he was acting on. We kind of like the ending comes really fast, and I was waiting for that scene at the end where they like explain, what the fuck exactly his motivations were. Like we see Bible verses around, and I mean, I'm able to digest it the way that I view it, which is basically what I said, like environmental concerns, like the Tower of Babel in Babylon is obviously a big theme. Humanity reaching beyond what like we feel is appropriate for us to do and treading into the realms of gods. And obviously, like some people oppose that for various reasons. But like we didn't really get much of that, so I'm assuming, based on saying that the next movie is way more heady, my guess would be we get more into that stuff when we get there.
Actually,
which I'm very excited for.
Unfortunately,
no.
no. It's actually takes place like years in the future. Pretty much the whole Babylon project is like, yep.
Is it over now? Are we
done?
Did it.
Yeah.
Oh well, okay.
It's like the aftermath of.
Fair
of
enough.
Like
maybe the manga
on,
does more of that. I
country.
don't know.
Well, it's interesting to note the environmental kind of themes with the Babylon project, because the reason it's controversial is that they're trying to use it to stem the basically because of global warming, the sea level is rising, and so they're trying to like block off the rising of the ocean and like reclaim the Tokyo Bay essentially, which. It fascinated me because the new movie that just came out, Weathering with You, talks about the fact that Tokyo itself is built on land that was once underwater. Like the place where it is just a few hundred years ago, that was not land. So it already is built on essentially, land that only exists because of the way that the environment has changed. And so now they're trying to reclaim more of it in this show. But the environmental groups are concerned that by doing that, it will fuck up all these ocean currents and like do all this bad stuff to the environment. And so,
man, I was so here for all that shit. I wanted to dig into that. Let's get into some environmental, philosophical debates about, life and how we should be living on this planet. A little bit light on that, but it was still good. I felt like the movie did a good job of tapping into that to sate my hunger.
I would say like Oshii's projects in the series deal more with it than say the TV show and like the second OVA. But really, I guess there are certain one-off episodes that'll give you more insight to that in the TV series. Yeah. So if you want more of that, every so often you'll get a little bit more of that in the actual TV series.
Yeah, it's interesting. It almost feels like the themes that do emerge throughout Patlabor are sort of incidental in a way, like. Other than the main theme of like bureaucracy being inherently just like a clusterfuck, this idea that I guess the way I would describe it is particularly the Japanese have this tendency to basically expect absolute perfection and then plan around absolute perfection when they cannot achieve absolute perfection, because like human error is obviously a thing, so like their team is given the absolute minimum budget and resources of what could be done if they never made a mistake. And of course they are all complete fuck ups who make mistakes constantly because they're badly trained. Half of them don't want to be there.
The feel of the show from episode 1 for me, and I mean I absolutely fucking love it when I detect that like a show has take the first scene where we've got like the head chief mechanic is waiting for his Patlabor to arrive, or his labor or whatever. I think these terms are relatively interchangeable. He's waiting for like the new shipment to arrive, and he's waiting all day, and I'm just looking at like the environment he's in. And it's like these large, flat, like grasslands, basically, which seem to be on like the outskirts of the city, and they're right in front of the water. Like, and then later that episode or the next episode, they bring up like, all the land we're on right now was under the sea. It's been reclaimed, blah blah blah. Various projects we're doing. This is like the main thing that we're dealing with environmentally. Like all that, like from like frame number 1. Everything that's happening is literally resting on like the baseline story of like land reclamation and like the Babylon project. Like without that land where our events take place would not exist. It would not be there. So very literally, it's the case. And so as a result, like our fun characters, like our playful, labor pilot who calls her robot Alphonse, Noah, who's adorable, and like Asuna Shinonome, who's like the president of the CEO of the company that makes the things. Oh, what a wacky cast, and all the other guys. Like all their fun is wonderful, and I love experiencing it. But for me, it's like the chessboard has been like wonderfully crafted. There's so much thought that's put into the game, and now we're kind of just watching like the pieces that happen to be there playing out on this stage. But I just feel like so much thought and preparation was put into this setting with like it doesn't even really matter what pieces are there.
Let me just say this. Great original anime always comes from extensive preparation work.
No doubt.
It's less to do with how beautiful, how much work you put into actually animating it. It's like how much thought did you put into it beforehand. I always think of Imaishi talking about how Gurren Lagann was like 4 years of pre-production and 1 year of actual production. They just wanted to get everything right. And this show the labors themselves, the designs are so intricate. There's so many details of how the guns come out of their body.
My favorite detail. I mean, those are great. My favorite detail is how the joints are clearly it's like, why are they wrinkly? It's because clearly they have cloth covering up individual joints, because obviously that could be a safety hazard. So they put cloth over, and I'm like, that's so fucking smart. Someone gave a shit about designing these mechs, because they're used among civilians. There's people around. These are police. They're not fantastic. Fantastic. Beautiful.
They're a perfect. Because when I think about what might have been the thought process behind the idea of Patlabor coming together, it's okay, we want to make a show where it's police mechs, and then somebody said, all right, what would that actually realistically amount to? Because obviously mecha are retarded. They're a stupid idea.
90% of the mech usage is literally carting them around, which they all complain about what a fucking hassle it is, because it is a huge hassle.
Exactly.
It's so great. Logistical details. And half the cast is legitimately just for logistics and nothing else. Yeah. I love it. I fucking love it.
So you look at the mech and you think, okay, well that it looks completely realistic. It looks functional.
Yeah.
But it also looks awesome. It looks really cool. It's one of the cooler mech designs in my opinion. And I really think it says something about the way that the police kind of are, this fixation on having the big cool thing instead of fixing the systemic issues in the actual police force.
Well,
and I'm thinking about the American police, right, where we have literally military vehicles and meanwhile our people are so shittily trained that civilians get gunned down all the time.
Bro,
so it's
how about, I think it was the start of episode 2 where I'm oh no, they did it, and Noah's like, guys, they just installed the thrust propulsor and the wings on my Patlabor. I'm so excited. Here I go flying in the sky. And then it's a dream. It's a dream. Everyone's like, you fucking retard. Obviously, we can't make them fly. That's 5 years or 10 years away technologically. But then, oh my God, what a fucking enjoyable thing that later in the episode, through this stupid ass, I absolutely loved it, but through this convoluted sequence of a blimp flying overhead, they lower cables and they grab onto the thing. They make the flying actually happen, but in practical terms that actually make sense. Oh my God! Yes,
practical is a strong word.
Yes.
Just to get
what a satisfying fucking arc. I start the episode pissed off that they're going to be too unrealistic and bullshit. They immediately get rid of that, but then it happens anyway through reasonable terms. 10 out of 10.
I called that was a dream. I figured I was this is
I didn't know.
This
I didn't know.
Be real.
Too early for me to judge.
She grabs a blimp just to be carried 20 feet to the other side of it.
just to pass a bridge. Just to pass one fucking bridge.
She couldn't just go around.
That was it. That's the only purpose. Oh, and and I gotta say, the captain of that blimp is the best fucking character in all of Patlabor, who's literally just fuck it. I don't care if I get fired and lose my license. I just wanted to do this once in my life. I want to fly with a mech. Fuck it. And they're like, Captain, you're so fucking cool. And he was that fucking cool. Holy shit. I mean, okay, I guess to put on my criticism, it was a little unrealistic that a captain would throw away his license just to do one cool thing. But fuck that. It was the coolest thing I've ever seen.
We have to address,
he was helping the police. That's right.
Patlabor is ultimately, especially the OVA, it is a comedy.
Yeah.
And it's really nobody dies. Yeah. The stakes are never particularly high. Mass destruction happens and is kind of shrugged off. We don't usually see the consequences of it. But it's just really interesting that it feels so grounded. The type of things that are happening are not that dissimilar from other shows that deal with I'm thinking Dirty Pair or in fact You're Under Arrest, which are also about supposed police or bounty hunters who end up causing more damage than good. But those shows don't try to be realistic. They don't try to, feel this is actually this is not just it's not the characters' incompetence. It's the incompetence of the actual police. It feels, the incompetence feels like the incompetence that we actually see in the real world,
Yeah. Oh, what about in episode 3 where they have a hostage situation.
Yeah.
And one of them just gets, or
yeah.
just gets pissed off and just shoots them with a giant
He just
gun.
shoots them anyway.
And then they have to go.
It blows
to-
out the entire floor of the building.
Yeah. So the entire episode is them going to remedial training.
God, I loved
great.
that opening
Wonderful.
scene is so good. Just the way that it's because, and this is something you see a lot of in this show, where they'll establish a scene that would be tense, like it's a hostage situation, except that what the camera decides to show us is just everybody looking annoyed or bored. Like, everybody's just like, oh God, like this is not going to end well. Like, why is this happening?
Super hot.
And like that guy's personality is such a known quantity that like we could all see this coming a mile away because he just always blows up and fucks up like delicate. And in the movie, there's a moment where they're like, hey, there's like a rescue operation. Ota is too fucking gun crazy. And
Do
stuff.
not send that
Please
guy.
go do this now instead. Am I saying? Is it now or am I fucking that up? It's now, right?
Noah.
Noah. You're right. Okay, I'm switching the vowels. That's right. Noah. By the way, I was going to say about Noah, I was surprised because like with her kind of backstory, her history of like, she's the one who's kind of like mech crazy, kind of presented. She's sort of like the mascot of the series, sort of. I was expecting her to be kind of like ridiculously competent and sort of maybe like an actual kind of superhero sort of character.
Yeah.
But no, she was kind of doubtful and just loved her mech, but which I thought was like humble and kind of grounded, and I really appreciate it. And of course, if you want your super competent woman, you've got Kaneko like right over there, and she's the one who's unbelievably competent and the best girl.
It's very revealing in the movie that we learn that Noah named the mech Alphonse after first
her dog.
she had a dog, then a cat,
Right.
and this is now Alphonse number 3. So she's not
loved it.
regarding it for what it actually does. It's just her pet. She's just in love with it, you know, like she
So
does
she's a little
not
bit of that. She's a little bit of that. I don't know, insight where like early in the movie, and this happened in the OVA as well sometimes, where she looks at a Patlabor and she's like, "Ooh, this one." I guess she called it a labor. She looks at one. She's like, "Ooh, this one looks evil." And of course, like later on, it turns out like bad things happen with the things that she has this intuition about. Of course, of course.
What I think is really cool is like eventually that design. I think it's called like the X0. That labor. The one that's like the villain at the end of the movie. They actually do like incorporate that back into the TV series.
Oh, I knew that had to be the case because that it was obvious to me that design was so that they could have a new toy. You know, like, all right, we've got the labors, we've established that we need the next gen of labors. So,
but something I always thought was interesting about the series is that like the 98 Ingram is like so iconic that they like can't get rid of it, right? But
Right.
Because of the premise that
That'd be
like,
killing
Division 2
Alphonse. Are you going to put her pet down for the third time? I hope not.
Right. Well, because Division 2, who are like the underdogs, because they suck so much, they needed to get the new labors first. That gives them the opportunity where now Division 1 can get the even better labors, and they can keep the 98.
Oh, that's
longer.
perfect. That makes total sense. By the way, you know, it's interesting to note that our characters, they're part of Division 2 of like Section 2 of the Metropolitan Police or whatever. And I noticed that we meet, what's the name of like the second captain, Nanoka? I can't remember her name.
Naguma?
Nagaba? Okay, whatever it is. But yeah, it's her. Like, so our guys are the second unit. There's a first unit. For the moment I heard that she was the second captain of the first unit, I was like, oh, okay, can't wait to meet the first unit. I actually went on the Wikipedia and saw that only one member of the first unit ever appears, and it's like in the TV show. So like we never meet any of them except in like one small instance. And I was just, don't they like work out of the same building? I mean, they're here. Well, it's a little strange that they never showed up, I thought. But
it's actually two of them. It's actually two of them that they do show. But yeah, they have, I think, maybe like 2 or 3 episodes in the TV series. And then at the beginning of the second OVA, they deal with the plot that's going on there. And then they get on.
Okay.
But,
so they never play like a particularly large role, it sounds like.
No, but there's an episode that deals with like them being envious of the fact that, you know, they got the better labors and stuff like that. But they're like tempted. It's a weird thing where like they're tempted to accept like this new prototype labor that's like secretly like a evil scheme by this one corporation.
Right, of course.
And they want to do it because they want the better labors, but eventually they decide. Like,
that's sort of the plot of the movie as well. This like, we've got our new tech. And of course, there's the wonderful scene in the movie where like the 2 old engineers are like, I mean, technology's moving on, we're not ready for it. But then of course, it's that new tech that like is the problem and has to be undone. I love tradition. It's the best. It's my favorite thing.
Well, it wasn't that it was new tech. It's that the guy who made it's a terrorist.
Yeah. Although, I mean, I gotta just say, there was a couple things in the movie that, like, as things escalated, it's always enjoyable for me to watch with, like, stuff like this, like how far they're willing to stretch. Like, I feel like I could tweak some of the elements in here to make it a little more understandable and a little more, like, realistic things that could happen. Because, like, there's a new OS put into, like, all the labors all across, like, basically all of Japan. There's like 8,000 of them. And, okay, through a process of, if they hear a specific, like, resonance of sound above what humans can hear, and they built a giant mech out on or a giant ark out in the water, and it will resonate, not just it, but it will reverberate its resonance in a higher, like, among other structures throughout the Japanese coastline, and that sound will trigger all the labors to go, I mean, Jesus Christ, this is pretty insane. And the storm had to happen. That was just happened to be coming. I assume the guy knew that, but, like,
well, I mean, typhoons are gonna hit Japan.
They're gonna happen. Okay, I'm just saying, like, these things are. Oh, the other crazy element here is that, as this is directly lampshaded by the characters in the story, or, like, the top engineer guy, that the entire world basically was like, oh, there's a new OS, we are all going to install it, even though, like, no one's tested it before in everything, including nuclear fucking reactors, and we don't need any testing, and one guy wrote it and no one knows what's in it, no problem, we're gonna do it anyway.
They implied that they had extensively tested it, just that he
had, like, controlled the testing or something to make sure they didn't get,
or at least that his stuff was just buried so deep in there they wouldn't be able to find it. It's just that he never released the source code, so
I'm willing to stomach that. Perhaps my curiosity would have been satisfied a little bit if they pointed to those details a little bit more as to why no one was able to find it out beforehand. But, I mean, it is all feasible.
I think it had to do with, the one guy's dad who owns the SHI company,
who we
I
never
believe
see.
they were the ones who had released the OS, because I'm trying to, and here, I don't know if you've seen this movie more than once, so you can correct me if I'm fucking up any details here. But I believe that what had happened was that the guy who came up with HOS came to that industry because they were the newest labor industry, newest labor company, and so they needed a competitive edge. So he went to them knowing that they would want to buy this and spread it around, and have the patent to it. So the reason that they don't want to release the source code is because they don't want others to, be able to just. They don't want it to be an open source. They want everybody to have to go through them. So, but, obviously they themselves probably should have looked through the source code.
Well, yes, yeah. Okay, you know what else is funny about this? As a guy who works with computers and programming and whatnot, everything, I mean, it's always funny to see, like, they're like, there's a new OS. There's a new OS. Okay, this is not what an operating system does. An operating system is, like, a basic fundamental structure of a computer that, like, parses how data is processed and, like, where memory is stored and, like, interprets inputs and outputs and stuff. Like, what they're talking about is just software. It's just things installed. Like, you just install a program that when it hears a frequency, it makes it go crazy.
Nate?
Okay, but you know what? It's technobabble. It's not a big deal. It's fine.
Nate, it was 1989.
But it is always funny to watch.
Yeah.
1989.
1989, baby. The wave of the future. We're looking forward to the distant year, 1999. That's going to be a crazy year when we get there, guys. Let me tell you.
It is quite funny that this series takes place in 98 and 99.
That's right.
That's right. Good old just set it 10 years in the future. And
what could go wrong? It's an eternity from now. Obviously, we're going to have mechs then. I mean, I honestly, there's something about that. Things that are currently in the past that were predicted to be in the future, like your Blade Runners and stuff. I don't know, something about it just makes me so giggly, and I fucking love it. Just to see people like, they didn't. That's not correct, you fools.
Well, if that bubble didn't pop, maybe we would have seen
bubble.
this future. You know?
They were right on the way. They almost had it.
Yeah.
Well, we haven't talked much about, I don't know, like the actual police work that they're doing here, like how, their captain, is it Oto?
Ota.
That's right. Ota being
Goto.
something like a wunderkind of police
Goto,
work.
Never mind. What
Oh,
the fuck
Goto,
am I
that's
talking
right.
about?
Goto.
Yeah, I always get
Ota's
their
the other
names.
guy.
I always get their names mixed up. It was Goto
Bunch of
is the
fucking
captain,
cops.
and Ota is the hothead.
The gun man.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Goto is the guy, by the way. He is the dude. He's the man, and I love his whole entire. I just want to talk about him because he's introduced to us as a guy who seems like just very tired and kind of out of it most of the time. But what we eventually come to realize is that, for one thing, he seems to have no family.
True.
I think he just basically has dedicated his whole life to just like doing this police work. Like there's not really much else to him, and he understands other departments very well. Like, kind of his specialty is he's well connected, he knows how people are going to react to things, and he's very manipulative.
Very true.
To an extent that he's kind of a bastard. Like he keeps everything close to the chest. He openly lies to people.
Like his ridiculous shenanigans, planning this entire like murder story, accidental death when they're at the training camp, just to teach them that like be careful with guns, was like the overarching message of the entire thing. It was wonderful.
In the movie, he heavily manipulates Noah and what's the main
Asuna,
Asuna. He heavily manipulates them to do his bidding by just concealing information.
It's not even necessary. He's just an asshole. I mean, I guess it helps, but he's a string puller.
Yeah.
By the way, I want to say,
because the guy wouldn't have investigated otherwise.
He could have just
the only
asked
reason
him,
he
though.
did it is he thought that their mechs had that OS on them.
Right, so he deliberately didn't tell them, even though he knew they were in no danger, so he felt he would use that to motivate his work. I mean, I guess it made him work faster, that's true. By the way, I gotta say, one of my, perhaps the most emotional scene for me in the entire show was about Goto. And it was just one little scene later on, maybe episode 4 or something, where the other girl captain, Nagano, I think that's her name, who obviously they have, sorry, what was it? Nagumo. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Where Captain Nagumo is just like, she's hanging out at work or something, and Goto comes in, and she's like, oh, weren't you supposed to be on vacation? And he's like, yeah, I just thought I'd come in and make myself useful. And like, clearly, she's like, that's not necessary. And he's like, well, okay. But then she just sees, and he's like, you know what? There's a couple things you could look over. And we cut to a shot of like when he hears that, we're outside, we're looking in through a window. We see him like jump up with excitement and like dash over to like start doing the work. And it's like, oh, he just wants to work. It makes him happy to do it. He doesn't have anywhere else to go. And he likes being with his friends here at work. That almost made me tear up, just seeing that one little sequence. I think he just
wants to be around her. There's clearly some kind of...
Sure.
Does the show get more into like the past of their relationship or what was going on there at all?
I mean, there's definitely a lot of, romantic tension throughout the TV series.
I'm not sure there's much past to them, as much as, like, working together and,
Well, I thought maybe they had a relationship at some point or something, because, like, one of the first interactions they have, she says something to the effect of, like, I like, requested to not be around you or something like, or, like, I didn't want to be... Like, she almost indicates that, like, there's some reason she doesn't... She's uncomfortable with being around him, like that they. So I thought, oh, maybe they were ex-lovers, you know,
maybe.
And he's still pining for her, but he knows that he can't try to move too much. But there's a scene at the end of the last episode where he tries to like get her to go look at the wife with the baby. He's like, oh, don't you want to go look at the baby? Like he's trying to talk her into having a baby with him, which makes me wonder, maybe they had like a relationship and he wanted them to like start a family, but she didn't want to because she wants to keep being an officer or something, and that's why they've split. Could be.
Maybe. I think she's just trying to maintain that professional relationship, But I don't think there's anything like that. I don't recall anything like that.
I mean, because
that was just a vibe I got,
Sure, but I mean, another possible interpretation is just like they clearly like each other at least a little bit, and they're just dealing with that,
Well, he clearly likes her.
Okay, I mean,
she admires him.
She definitely admires his work and stuff.
There's always the hint, that she's.
Yeah.
Well, how about the scene? I mean, just aesthetically. I mean, we could talk endlessly about amazing scenes. I believe episode 5 or something, where he comes to like he asks her just to meet him in private because like there's corruption and things are going down, and so he meets her at her house and she comes out in like her plain clothes and just it's raining outside, but that they kind of have like a little intimate. It's about work, but obviously this is more of an intimate setting in like the car, and it's raining and cold outside and they're warm in there, and then they step out and then it turns to snow, and all of a sudden it becomes this beautiful, magical, snowy environment outside. I mean, moments like that are just I just like to just look at this show when it's doing stuff like that. It's so I should post it for you guys. I made endless screen caps of like a million beautiful landscapes.
Oh, just send them all to me, and I'll just play them one after another.
That is a great idea. I will do that. So good.
But
so good.
yeah, the crushed, like, super dark blacks in this show. Like, there is a Oshii staple for sure. He did it a lot in the Urusei Yatsura, the second movie. There's
Bro,
like,
after this,
whole
I've
scenes
had
set that way.
Urusei Yatsura, like Radical Dreamer, downloaded for like years, and I'm like, oh, I watch it one of these days. Oh, I just want more Ishii in my life. Whatever he makes, I want it inside me. I'm gonna go watch that like tonight or something. It's
a
so
really
beautiful.
interesting way of doing dark scenes where instead of setting the whole scene in the dark, it's just parts of it are lit normal, but anything that's in shadow is just completely black. I mean, I guess that was just something they did a lot more in the cell animation days, and I feel like it's fallen off stylistically because you don't have to do it anymore, but like you still should. It looks really good.
Everyone's got their own style, but I mean, your style animators are probably shittier than Ishii's. Just do his instead. Just do his.
Not Ishii.
It's
not Oren Ishii.
Whatever. Fuck it.
Mamoru Oshii.
So if it gives you guys an idea of what the second movie is like, it originally actually started as a remake of that two-parter, like episode 5 and 6.
That did feel like a big
movie,
climax, right there.
Originally the movie was going to just be that plot line again, but they were like, nah, fuck that shit. We don't want to do the same thing over again. So they tweaked it, but that's the type of story that the second movie is. Very political, thrilling.
Very dramatic.
And I will say, I thought that two-parter I was very torn on, because on the one hand, I thought the story they were telling was kind of interesting, and I liked the relationship between like Ota and Kei and all that setup. But it felt like it needed more space. It needed more than 2 episodes, because it's just true. So much goes on, and like you said, like it ends in such a weird, abrupt way where. I wasn't even sure if the guy had actually lost at first. Like, I wasn't sure if it ends so suddenly with him like smiling. So I was like, oh, is this going to continue in the next episode?
Well,
I guess not.
I think he feels that he, hasn't lost. Like
he
says
he has another chance.
Right, exactly. So I mean, open to interpretation, I guess, whether that counts as a true loss or not. But obviously the plot was stopped for now.
Just kind of felt like everything was really being crammed in to fit it in there, and I was like, could have used one more episode.
It's telling that I didn't realize that the 7th episode wasn't planned, or I don't know, wasn't part of the original plan, because like this, it's such a climax. I was really surprised there was another episode after episode 6, but now that you explain that makes sense. Yeah.
So okay. I was going to say something, but now I forgot.
Here's something. I was just noticing how amazing this looks, and how many of these panels look like Angel's Egg. And I mean, I don't have anything more to say beyond that. I'm just currently looking over my images at like all the screen caps I took of like my favorite little moments and stuff, and they're just so fucking good. The moment where the ghost girl shows up and like her hair is animated in the wind. Oh my God, it's amazing. Amazing.
This OVA is kind of like a sampler pack of like everything you could do with this concept. It's kind of like each episode, like one is a like a horror type thing, this other one's like this science fiction monster type thing, one's a standard, just crime, hostage, whatever the
procedural.
Hell. Yeah, and then you got
I
this
was really
political
surprised.
thriller.
Yeah, it was surprising going from episodes 1 and 2 into 3 and 4, because episode 1 mostly just establishes characters. 2 is there is a big action scene. Then 2 is another like
a little bit more comedy in the second one too. Like
that is the episode where they're attacking the diet is under a threat or something. I'm not remembering right.
The what?
Episode 2 is the one with the old lady sets up a bomb.
the missile launcher or something.
And then the blimp and all that. And episode 2 is very goofy, but like I expected every episode to be like episode 2. Like it's always going to be them like stopping some kind of plot. But then you get into 3 and 4, and episode 3 is this, I guess it's just a send up of monster movies essentially. And I mean, for most of the episode, I was just kind of like, all right, this is fun, but this is fucking retarded. Like, this is really stupid. But the question on my mind through the whole episode is like, what is it gonna be? You know, like because the whole thing is hyping you up for this idea that this scientist. Well, first it's hyping you up that there's a sea monster, and then the scientist has this genetic experiment he was doing, and the whole time my expectation is it's not gonna be real. Like the scientist is misguided or something's wrong. But no, it is a sea monster.
It's 100% real. 100% real.
But the only thing that saves them is that it happens to have the same face as Hiromi, and then they have just this weird introspective moment together, and it walks out to sea, and I was just like, wow, they fucking saved it. Like, that episode is now emblazed in my mind. Like, I'll never forget that it ended that way.
That was obviously the most ridiculous episode of all of them. I mean, I guess these things could happen. I mean, you could do this in like any show. A mad scientist shows up out of nowhere, and then they deal with the ramifications to some degree. I
also love the presentation of the mad scientist, that like he's simultaneously proud of himself and terrified of what he's done.
I love the part where he's looking in his like little what is it, monoscope? I don't know. What do you call it? A microscope. Looking at his microscope. Yeah. And he like, he can't see, so he like takes his eye patch off to see. Like he's
I was wondering what that was about. Like, I assume he just did that to like get closer to the microscope. I don't understand.
I think he's just wearing the eye patch.
He's just doing that for
fun? He's an evil
he's...
scientist.
Shit.
Just the aesthetic.
Okay. That would make sense. I was wondering what the fuck that was about. All right. Hey, fair enough.
But I also love the lighting in that scene. Like the lighting, that whole explanation scene where he's explaining like how he created this like crazy monster. It's really cool.
There's so many beautiful color palettes, man. There was a scene in the movie that I paused on because I had to take a shit, and it was just like a conversation scene, but it was lit entirely purple because it was just like the setting sun, but it looked so good, and I was like, man, every scene, like they really think about like what is the mood of this scene gonna be? Okay, what's the palette? So many palettes.
Possibly my favorite part of the movie was, which obviously had more time to dwell on scenes and flesh stuff out, was like the multiple scenes of like the investigator and his second investigator guy. Yeah. Now this was like pure just taking me back to like Ghost in the Shell, 1995 days. This was like pure that. With like, I was really curious who the composer was, because I was gonna bet all my fucking money. It's the same guy. Knew it.
Kenji Kawai.
Yep. And
he's worked on most of Oshin's stuff. I think.
He worked on the Devilman OVA too.
Oh, okay. Well, the shots of him wandering around with that guy, which is just like that understated like bongo drum and like, I don't know, steel drum or something going on, with like these slow, no talking, just like looking at these like wrecked environments, which at first I was like, what are these guys doing? What's going on? And we learned that they're exploring like the old residences of the scientist in question that they're trying to track down and whatnot. And like, I mean, here, just, some of these images I got, like this one shot from inside the perspective of like an old lady's shop looking out at our investigators, all black, just with the wind. I mean, in a way, this kind of reminds me of the Motoko framed by light as she sits up in the, that famous shot and whatnot. Right. But like so many of these shots were just, I mean, wonderful to look at the whole time. And here's another one of just like the skylines. And this really ties into like the first shot from episode 1 or whatever. And all these scenes of just these wide expanses of land. Obviously, like this is land that hasn't had time to been I don't know, repurposed yet. I mean, obviously these wrecked areas are a little different, but there's like these wrecked environments where we can feel like the degradation of the world, which is kind of the theme of the movie, which like, it seems like the, by creating all this new land, it seems the issue that like the scientist guy had was that like it's causing us to like forget where we came from. Like this is one theory as to why he led them through all these areas. Sort of
that it's like this constant cycle of like building new and then letting the old just deteriorate and go to fuck.
It's like a consumerist society is losing touch with what really matters at the base level or something. And like that juxtaposed with like the wide expanses of the newly reclaimed land and stuff. Like all the shots, my mind is just filled with images of like, remember, there's just some scene I think in episode 6 where like they're launching on the water to go do like their big sea mission or whatever. or maybe it's fucking in the movie or something, but we see like all the unnamed miscellaneous engineers who we don't really know, like running along the pier, all individual, like beautifully animated as like they're launching, and we just like the ocean waves are crashing, and like our guys are just getting ready for battle, like this hype music is kicking in, but like all these factors come together to just make it such an enjoyable thing to just consume through the animation and all these factors together. Man, it was just such a good time.
And I think for a show like this that is very dry and dialogue driven, that is so powerful. Like I think about how many shows I've complained about, like just long dialogue exchanges set in cafes with shot reverse shot. And it's like, I don't have a problem with long dialogue scenes. I don't even have a problem really with exposition dumps. It's about how you sell it. And there are moments in this show where characters will go on like a little bit of an expository dump, but it's always done in like a weird tongue-in-cheek kind of way. It usually ends in a joke. There's and it's always visually gorgeous. Like you could literally fucking have the sound off and this would still be fun to watch.
Absolutely. I mean, just one more thing and then we can get off this topic, at least for me anyway. Like one of my favorite looking shots was just in the movie when they're doing research back at the like second in command, like it's clearly his house because he's like talking to his mom downstairs. By the way, they don't explain that. I just inferred that by using my brain and watching the show, which was very enjoyable. And we see like his crazy tech set up, and he like hacks into the mainframe and is like, "Oh, we gotta pipe into like to HQ for extra RAM right now, so I'm gonna connect the fucking thing." Yeah. And maybe those things are dubious, maybe not. But boy, did I love looking at every second of like this fully animated, like cluttered rooms when detailed properly are so good to just look at. People thought about this. Like, look at those fans. Look at those two fans at the top of the screen right there. Where did he get those fans? Was he at like a fair somewhere? What's the backstory with those fans? I want to know. I love these people are so real. I care about them because they gave a shit while producing.
I gotta say, another reason I think that this would be difficult for children to watch is much like Ghost in the Shell, this show expects you to understand a lot of things about just how the world works.
Well, famously, Digi, you and I were Philistines who I think when we were young, we both just didn't understand and didn't like Ghost in the Shell.
No, not
And then
at
we
all.
grew up, and then we're like, oh, this is like one of the best things ever. So,
well, just and a lot of it is just straight up having not understood what the fuck they were talking about when I was a kid, you know. And like with this, like there's a major part of the movie that just kind of only comes up in the dialogue a couple times towards the end is that they have sent the HOS to MIT, who is cracking it. So if you don't know what MIT is, this would be a very fucking confusing detail. We don't cut to MIT. There's nobody from MIT. It's just mentioned a couple. Oh yeah, we sent it off to MIT. Like, I know what that is. But would I have known when I was 10? I don't think so.
Things like that. I always love little details like that. I mean, does MIT, if you went there now and you're like, talk to staff, like, guys, do you ever like collaborate with like the Japanese police force for like hacker issues anywhere? And they're like, yeah, actually, that's like our number one activity. We're doing that every day. That's probably what happens over there. But I mean, it's good enough. Moves the plot along. Hilarious. I love all that shit.
Yeah. You were talking about those long scenes where it's just music and like understated visuals, just scenery and stuff like that. And obviously that's like super iconic from Ghost in the Shell. It's like what I always think of when I think of something like that. But like even Patlabor 2 has like 2 or 3 long scenes that are like that throughout the movie.
I just want to drink them in, man.
Yeah.
I just want to consume them.
Really amazing.
I'm going full consumer with this show, no doubt.
I mean, Angel's Egg is almost exclusively
It's like exclusively that, yeah. And that's why it's like an 11 out of 10, like best anime
3 lines of dialogue in that movie, I think. Oh, boy. I'm trying to think of more of the thematic elements that came up in this, because it's all so subtle and kind of in the background. And episode 4, where the whole thing is this like murder mystery plot, kind of, that ends in a back-to-back double reveal where our boy thinks that he's cracked the case, but he's wrong. Kanaka really cracked it. But like, there's a moment in her dialogue where it almost feels like the writer is speaking directly to me, where she's like explaining how, like, if you only go with the story that you've been fed and you're basing all your suppositions off of that, then you're missing the
Kanaka literally debunked fake news in one fell swoop for all time.
Exactly.
Thank you, Kanaka.
She was
New York City police sergeant. That's what I'm talking about.
I was hearing the voice of independent journalism in my head as she spoke. You know.
Indeed.
So.
And it was thoroughly red-pilled. Keep it up.
Yeah. And once again, that was a scene that kind of like that episode is mostly feels like very goofy and kind of just like a comedy episode. But then when you get that speech at the end, it gets the noggin jogging. You know, the show,
because, you know,
even at its most ridiculous, always has something to take away from it.
And honestly, going with the narrative, I mean, of course, when you hear about like this mystery stuff, I was like, oh, okay, obviously this is all going to be fake. But the show, it succeeded fully, at least for me, of like by giving enough of a misdirect. And I didn't really believe the first guy, but it was the specific details of like the fact that like paint blood was in the thing. And then it's like, oh, okay, it's obviously fake blood. That's got to be fake. But then like the backstory that was concocted explained specifically why it would be like paint blood and not real, because that's like what would be in the bullet that was shot according to the story. But you have to think larger about like the information you're also not being given. And it was actually kind of a mind expanding moment when they're like, okay, bro, you're literally being manipulated by selective information. So, you know, you gotta think like my instincts at first were, this is obviously bullshit. By being fed little bits of information, it convinced me that instinct was wrong. And then it revealed that, no. Actually, Nate, obviously your instincts were right all along. So there's something informational or valuable to be learned from that, I think. And it was a great episode. I did not expect all those twists and turns.
Agreed.
What can you say?
What was your favorite episode, Nate?
Favorite episode? God, maybe episode 1. Because I have just such like positive memories. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. The movie was by far my favorite thing, obviously. But like, for different reasons.
It's almost the length of the entire OVA.
Yeah.
So
it's true. It's true. I guess I like. I don't. You know, I haven't had a ton of time to like digest and really weigh all the pros and cons of all the episodes. But I have such a positive. Like my expectations are always so low going into a new show, and to like see that episode 1. Maybe it's episode 2. Honestly, it might be episode 2. I don't know. I don't fucking know. But every episode at least met or exceeded my expectations. Okay, I guess my least favorite episode is probably the sea monster one because it was so retarded and I didn't like that's the one where I like, okay, because that happens, this is why I could be convinced that ghosts would exist in this universe because they do stuff like that in one episode. It's a bruh moment for me, but I mean, obviously still hilarious. Played for laughs. It works for me. There's probably not the 2-parters though.
There's definitely an episode in the TV series where there legitimately are ghosts.
They're legit. Okay, well, great.
And in the manga, because that's borrowed from the manga.
It was in the manga too. You know what? I was going to ask that question before. I don't think we've said the name of the manga guy, or maybe we did at the beginning. I was curious. Since you said it was all made at once, does he actually like deserve credit for like concocting the whole story, or was it like a larger like corporate job to come up with the whole premise, and that guy was just the one tasked with making the manga? Do you know the distinction I'm making there?
Well, I believe they're all part of Headgear, so like I think it was like a group effort.
Okay.
Everybody conceptualized it together.
I was curious about that.
I'm thinking it's Headgear. Just in concept, reminds me of like Bae Papas, the group that made Revolutionary Girl Utena, where like everybody credits it to being Ikuhara because he's the director and he had like the main. I guess people see it as he had the main ideas, but it was a 5-man group. It was called Bae Papas. They made the show together. You know, so I have to imagine that this case was similar. Like it wasn't just Oshii or just somebody else. It's anybody who was in Headgear probably had a lot to do with it. I imagine that the story was designed in countless meetings,
I mean, I was going to say, as somebody who has countless meetings about various bullshit for the various projects he's involved with, doing online shit, I find that stuff so fascinating, and I would love to, like, get a breakdown. Maybe there's, like, interviews or something somewhere about all projects like this, but since this is the one before us,
I'll tell you, there is a lot of info about this movie and OVA, because not only is there a director commentary of the OVA,
fuck yeah,
which fucking just a warning, if you're gonna watch this, you should probably torrent it. I'll put I'm gonna have to add like a bit at the beginning of this podcast to explain a bunch of shit because
people don't know like which one we're talking about or something,
and just where to get it, because
it was a little hard to get.
the I don't know about the OVA, but the movie has been out in the U.S. forever. I happen to have just been gifted, well, not gifted, but Econ left his collection at my house.
Oh, okay.
And he has the movie as a box set that comes with a huge book that has like interviews and all kinds of information and all the storyboards. So just Oshii's storyboards for the movie. There's a booklet of all the storyboards. And there's a second bonus disc making of the movie, as well as commentary. So yeah, any questions we have about its production are probably answered somewhere.
Fantastic.
Unfortunately, I did not have time to watch all that before we did this, but this is a casual podcast, so I didn't want to hold myself to too high of a standard here. I don't know, Hiro, have you seen any of that background production stuff?
Well, the only versions of the show that I own are like 3 different incarnations of the Laserdiscs that exist for like all the movies and, all the TV series. So I can't actually.
Do you have a Laserdisc player?
I do. Yeah.
Nice.
Oh my god!
I can't actually understand it, but there's an entire disc that's a documentary on the production of like the first and second movie. Things like that.
I assume no subtitles. I don't know how Laserdisc works, but yeah.
There aren't subtitles on this one specifically, but for example, I have a Japanese box set of Ghost in the Shell, and it actually does have English subtitles and the English dub. You can like switch between it. It's kind of cool.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
But yeah, so what I was going to warn people about is when I initially was just going to, because I'm a scrub and I don't like to wait for downloads, I was just going to watch this on streams.
Oh, no.
But the sites that had the OVA, instead of the subtitle track, was the subtitle track of the fucking commentary.
Oh my
God. You're probably going to want to download this bad boy.
The fuck?
Because the streams do not have the correct subtitle track. Very annoying. But yeah, it's very easily findable
with director's commentary on specifically. I would fucking love that shit. I never go and watch director's commentary. I need to start fucking doing that. That's like where all the cool shit is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Watching director commentary on Fooly Cooly expanded my understanding of that show considerably. So I would definitely say it's a good way to go. But yeah, I'm trying to think of what my favorite episode was, because I really loved the first 2. 3 and 4 I enjoyed. Like 3 I definitely was like, okay, this is kind of stupid until the ending.
Yeah. It's an iconic
4 I enjoyed, but it, and 5 and 6 are cool. 7 is the most like just fun individual episode.
I know
of just,
you said
like
that's your
crazy
favorite.
car chases and fucking.
Yeah, that one's my favorite. That one's just like gorgeous,
like
animation wise, in my opinion.
Well, and the fact that the episode essentially ends with a 100% believable scene, in universe at least, of a mecha clotheslining another mech in order to win the fight. And it's drawn as one big, harmony spread with all the cherry blossoms flying by and everything. It's beautiful. It almost feels like the whole show existed for that moment. Just... Also, the fact that that's where we learn that the mechs have police stun batons.
Yeah.
Right.
Why?
Right.
Why would they need a stun baton?
I guess those are probably anti-labor batons, because
Also-
in the movies we
also,
see him use it and it stuns another guy, but then he revives.
They use the
May
shit out
we
of those
also
in the TV
mention-
series.
May we also mention that the guns are revolvers?
Oh my god! Oh, that was like
revolvers.
Like my favorite part of the movie. One of them was when Noah, Jesus Christ. When Noah is like, she's on her way up to go to the, do the thing. She's doing plot things. And like, she's fighting off a bunch of laborers and stuff. And she stops and she gets out of her mech because the revolver has spent all its 6 bullets. She physically, as a human being, is unloading with her tiny body the giant revolver shells and putting in new ones. That, for some reason, that was just like my favorite thing, to see that done manually by a human being. Because we always see like the little engineer guys running around holding bullets and stuff. Actually, the first time I saw them like wheeling out just a giant revolver, like relative to human size, I was like, that's got to be the most efficient design of a weapon of all time. There could be no doubt. And then seeing her, I mean, it's just like they're just playing by their own rules in universe. Of course, you have to manually reload it. But geez, they don't have a lot of fucking shots, I guess. Only 6 before you got to do that. But
I don't know if the thought there is that this will minimize the amount of ammo they will use if they only have 6 shots, or if it's more just because again,
enough to get the job
everything
done.
about the labors is inefficient and ridiculous.
Yes,
and,
certainly true.
They're just purely designed to be as cool as possible.
Yeah.
But functional. They make some kind of sense.
You know, while I was just talking about that moment, because that moment is as Noah is headed up to like the top of the ark at the climactic scene of the movie, and I just wanted to say that like. At that point, what is explained to us is happening in the universe, or what they think is happening, is that like they're on the ark, the big shit's going down, they need to dismantle it, the robots are going crazy, and suddenly the guy they think who started all this, like the programmer, Jehovah, aka Jehovah, because he thinks he's God or he has a problem with God or something like that. They didn't quite flesh out exactly where that was all going, I think. But that was fine. I got enough to enjoy. But when she gets to the top, it's actually like it's filled with birds, and that shot was so beautiful. And then I'm like, oh, there's gonna be like a misdirect. He's gonna be there. It's gonna be a big villain speech, but no. Shit. Oh shit! Is that are you being called to duty?
No, it's like some weird Korean like national alert thing on my phone.
Fascinating.
Sorry.
I think that's probably letting you know the coronavirus has landed.
The coronavirus has landed. What is it? The high pitched resonance is activated, and your labors are about to malfunction and wreck shit all along the coast.
She's talking. Well, she gets fallen.
In that scene,
it was actually a super low frequency resonance.
I thought it was okay. You're probably right. But just in that scene, like seeing all the birds, it looked amazing. Loved that. But then I was expecting like the guy to show up and have like a big villain speech because we've been told he's dead. I'm like, there's no way this guy's dead. He's gonna have his big villain moment. But actually, he had just attached his ID number conveniently 666 to the foot of a bird, which is like so. I mean, none of this quite makes sense, but it's just kind of one of these like weird, like mystical moments. Like, what exactly are the forces at work here? It's like a God, Satan thing, Jehovah, Ark, Tower of Babel collapsing thing going on, and like I'm both simultaneously able to appreciate the action going on and kind of feel like. I mean, like at the end of Ghost in the Shell, that big moment where like a literal angel seems to appear and comes down to like to Motoko to like carry her to like an ascended plane. I suspect that was non-diegetic personally, that isn't really what was going on in that scene. And I feel like, and all of Angel's Egg is obviously trippy as shit. I just think that like something similar is probably what they're getting at here. And none of the plot threads really got to a big satisfying like villain speech as to exactly why. But now that I feel like I'm maturing a little bit more in my taste and my ability to appreciate this medium in general. And now I'm able to more sit back and just be like, you know what? I can see that they're getting at a bunch of little things here. They don't spell out every little bit for us, but I just really enjoy seeing all the pieces coming together at moments like that, even if it doesn't have like some grand meaning. I mean, what grand meaning is Mamoru Oshii gonna make that like the philosophers of the ancient world haven't like made 1,000 years ago? He's
I'll point out as well, I mean, you made a whole analysis of Angel's Egg, which came out just a few years earlier, and how it is very much about religious...
loss of faith is the main thing.
Yeah, loss of faith. Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of the religious imagery in this movie came from a similar kind of perspective or something.
Yeah, that's true. I'm curious if anyone else is credited with writing or if it's all Oshii.
I'm wondering about because the villain in this movie is. I do think the idea is that he sort of sees himself as he is going to play God and punish the humans for playing God, essentially, which is. Kind of a weird mental place to be in, I guess, to take it upon yourself.
That seems to be basically the mindset of all of Beach House, that like they object to the Babylon Project, causing these disturbances that like they willingly admit, like episode 1 or 2 or whatever, that like, we don't actually know all the ramifications of what's going to happen when we try to reclaim all this land with like sea currents and all kinds of shit. Yeah. We're just going to do it anyway and like hope for the best, which is, I mean, understandable, but obviously things could go wrong there. And I mean, I actually, you know what? This reminds me of something else, Gigi. It's that, remember when we were doing Babylon, which I will probably finish whenever that comes out in like February or something. A lot of people I noticed in the comments were giving me shit for being like, actually, Nate, that's the Tower of Babel, not Babylon. I looked it up, motherfuckers. They're the same thing. They're the same thing. They refer to the same like place and versus tower or whatever. So like all this is about like humanity overreaching what it's able to do and what it should be.
She's a dwelling place for demons. She's a cage for every. I don't remember the lyrics.
7 years of semen glooped into her pussy. It's no big deal. This is just the plot of Patlabor. There's no need to make a big deal out of it.
Patlabor.
Right. It is.
We have to. We have to end the Patlabor meme, and I know it's partly my fault because I've been pronouncing it wrong forever.
Yeah.
But as soon as I watch if
it
you
stands
watch
for
any
patrol
incarnation
labor. That's what it stands for.
Labor patrol.
Even if you
Right.
you look at the Japanese, it is patoreba.
I saw that. There's clearly an R-E kana in there, so it's clearly reiba. So it should be
Reiba.
Pat labor is definitely more
Patoreba.
correct. That's what that's what the emperor would want you to say if he was here.
It's just funny because I started saying it Pat labor, and people were like, "Oh, are you sure that's the right way to say it?" And I'm like,
the answer is yes. The answer is yes.
If you watch the show, the first thing they say is like in the late 90s, patrol and labor fuse into Pat labor. It's like the very first dialogue. So. Anybody saying Patlabor probably hasn't watched it.
It is incorrect. It is incorrect. I mean, you know what? I felt embarrassed because as I was going into this, I'm like, oh God, I watched all this. I still don't know if the machines are actually called Patlabors or labors or what the difference is. But I did look it up, and it seems that I think the machines generically they're all labors. But if you like the specific police ones and other specific versions
Those
are the patrol labor units. So,
Indeed.
That's just the job they're doing. Like they're doing labor patrol with their labors.
Okay. See, they never once refer to the mechs ever. I don't think as Patlabors. Oh God, I'm fucking doing it again. It's hard, man. The virus is in my brain. It's just labor. They're doing work. They're lifting things. They only say labor in the show. It's fascinating. Hey, did this ever get a Western release? Did this ever get dubbed or anything?
Yes.
It did. Is it good? Is it quality?
I mean, the version I downloaded has the dub on it.
By default.
And
oh, good.
Right. I had to change it every single fucking time.
God wants.
And I heard just a little bit of it, and it's a dub.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what you expect. I would not recommend it. I never would. So
Goto is voiced by Roger Craig Smith, apparently. The dude who plays Chris Redfield. Chris Redfield from Resident
sick.
Evil. Sonic the Hedgehog.
Right.
It's not that good.
So just going by that, it's probably a dub that people who like dubs will be okay with.
Sure. Yeah.
I can't tell the difference. Like, people tell me, "Oh, this is a good dub." I can't tell the difference. If I hear it's they all sound like shit.
Apparently,
none of them are.
Apparently, there's a British dub, like 2 different ones.
Fascinating.
So, amazing.
Fascinating.
Go watch that one instead.
I don't know if every incarnation of the franchise had a Western release, but the OVA in this movie certainly do. In the second movie,
well,
they probably all do, because Patlabor was fairly popular in the 90s. Like, it was even in the West. I don't know if it was popular before Ghost in the Shell, but it seems like there are some pretty sizable. I mean, like that again. I have the one Econ, the box set he gave me it's American. It's it's an English release.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's all out here.
But just the fact that there even is a whole box set for one movie is an indication it's been fairly successful over the years.
That's definitely true, and I would love to see the stuff in there. But I guess I'm getting kind of to the end of what I have to say. We could spend all day on the specific details. I mean, I give this a big old 2 thumbs up. Watch this fucking show. It's better than the trash you're watching this season. I guarantee it. I mean, it's probably no Oshigabudokan destroying our society and corrupting our children. But aside from that, your time would be well served watching this show. And I personally am dying to go watch the next movie because I want that crazy Oshi shit. See what he's got up his sleeve next.
I have to ask Hiro, what do you think are the do you think this is the best part of Patlabor, or do you think what's your favorite incarnation of it?
Yeah, see, I kind of see the OVA as just like a sampler of what the concept could be. So I do think the first movie is probably my personal favorite, but collectively, some of the all the most iconic, memorable moments I feel are from the TV series and the second OVA.
You know, I was gonna say about that, we were saying how dense this was, how many ideas there went into it. Like, my biggest gripe is like if this was all the Patlabor that existed, and this was all I had seen, I would think things like man, it's so weird we never see Shinonome, like Asuma's dad, because like he's so discussed many times, but like I would bet he comes up in the show and is like a pretty important character, at least at some point.
Surprisingly, no. I'm pretty
Does
sure
he
you
ever
never see
appear?
him.
Ever?
Sure you never
at
see
any
him.
point?
Nope, I don't
What
think
the
so.
fuck? Why do they? Well, what the fuck then? I guess this is just a retarded piece of shit series with no redeeming qualities. That is strange.
The impression, the sort of impression I have, because if having seen just the first few episodes of the show, episode 1 much more establishes Noah as like the main character.
Because she did not really feel that way in this.
Yeah, it's actually kind of baffling because the OP is only her.
Yeah.
She's
They
only
just pick the
the
cute
only
girl
character
and they
who
run with
appears.
it, yeah.
And the OP, by the way, is delightful. I fucking love the OP.
Yeah,
But Noah is. I would say there is no character who's more important than any other, and really the most fleshed out is probably Goto or the guy.
Yeah, Asuma.
Whose name I can
Asuma.
But yeah, I mean,
he seemed like the main character, especially the movie. Yeah. He was basically the main character of the movie, more or less. Yeah.
Pretty much,
Ensemble cast, still.
But like, watching the OVA in the movie, it's like I love everything about the concept, everything about the universe, and the amount of detail. And it puts me in a weird place because obviously the TV show being 47 episodes, we must get to spend just way more time, learn way more about these characters, see way more of what this concept can do. But you don't have the Mamoru Oshii directing, which is so it's like I mean it's really like a trade-off in a way. Not to say that the show is badly directed or anything, but just like. I love his style so much. Not that I can't get it from other places, but it definitely left me wanting more. Like watching the OVA in the movie left me feeling like, man, you could do so much more with this. Like, and obviously they did. So yeah, I think I'll probably give the show another shot, especially now that I'm more endeared to everything than I was the first time I tried it. Yeah. Especially knowing that you consider it to be the sort of more definitive version, I guess.
I don't know. Don't know if I can say that. The definitive version. Okay. Personally.
Well, I guess like, none of them is truly definitive. I feel like I go to I quote Masamune Shiro in the back of Ghost in the Shell Book 1, where he was like, he basically said, there is no definitive Ghost in the Shell. All of them are valid as their own thing.
Indeed, and that is a powerful quote. Definitely applies.
Yeah, when I think of Patlabor, like the best, like what sums up Patlabor, I definitely think of the first movie, though. I feel like every element that makes Patlabor good is like exemplified in this one. Like just from its art style to its story to its characters, all that stuff, Yeah.
Do things ever get as like dramatic and epic as they do in the first movie again? In terms of like set pieces that are happening, like the Ark being disassembled in the Babylon Project and all those things?
I mean, there are definitely some big towers where they fight like sea monsters and shit in the TV series.
Okay.
No, probably not. Like the second movie, it's there's not like a crazy set piece like that. But definitely dramatic wise, like the stakes are huge in the second movie. Like, no doubt.
You reminded me in the big ending scene in this movie where they're fucking running down the halls. It really made me want to play Halo. Did you think about because when the first time he shotguns one of those small robots, I immediately thought of like firing into the flood zombies, and like the whole rest of the scene I was just like, oh my god, this is like the flood level. I was just
transfixed like with the driving animation in that sequence, and like Kanuka like firing her revolver backwards. It's like burned into my mind. It's so fucking gorgeous looking. But I mean the whole sequence is awesome.
I wish Clancy was in more of the film.
She was there the whole movie. That, I mean, it was kind of worth it for me when you get the big, like they're like, we're calling in the big guns, and she fucking rolls up to the airport. They're like, business or pleasure, and she's like, fucking combat, motherfucker. I'm here to kill motherfuckers. I mean, she just slaps her whole dick and balls on the counter. What a fucking power move!
The biggest miss, the biggest thing
her
that was missing
English
from the movie
are like my favorite things in the whole show.
That's the number one thing missing from the movie is her yelling "Shut up!"
or the one iconic frame here. Let me post of her just going shit. Or I love her little fucking hat. Oh my god, she's just the best.
In the second episode when she cuts the wire and she's like, "You did it."
You did it. Holy shit. That was, again, flopping her fucking gigantic balls in front of everybody. As like, I mean, we didn't even talk, like that scene, it's a bomb defusal scene, and like our boy Asuma has like done most of the job, but he's down to the last wire. It's literally 50-50. We see him about to do the red wire. Is it going to be blue wire? He's like, okay, maybe I'll do the blue wire. And she just comes in, snips the red wire. She didn't know what she was going to be. She just had that decisiveness. That's what makes a powerful character. Yes. So cool. Thank God that she was here to make up for these incompetent motherfuckers. It was absolutely great. Well, she was such a great addition to the cast. And like the fact that everyone, when she shows up in episode 2, and everyone's immediately like, oh my God, you're so hot. Like, please have sex with me immediately. Yeah. What are your sizes? Can we please like date and also get married? I mean, same, bro.
And the fact that there's God, look at her, I'm just like face. Geeking out. I'm just thinking about the fact that in that scene, like we never see the guys. Like it just shows her having no reaction, just standing there completely blank as you hear everybody going completely apeshit. Oh, so good.
Or what about in,
all the comedy
in episode like 5 or 6? Where Asuma goes to visit her and like pulls out a rose at her door and like,
when he's like, this is a stick up, but it's a rose, but she pulls out a gun. Oh, jokes like that could get you hurt. Holy shit! Everything she does.
I also just love seeing her in her house and like the way that she's just like sitting there watching the news. You know, like she clearly is somebody who's just kind of. She's just really serious, you know, but has fun. She has fun being serious.
She's kind of an interesting
She's
character.
someone who gets joy out of her job. No doubt. No doubt about that.
She's kind of an interesting character because she's like an OVA original character. She's not in the manga.
Oh really?
Then, like, she's only in the first half of the TV series. And then she gets like traded out with a new character who is from the manga, and then they do.
Oh, what?
But then they bring. I mean, but then they bring her back.
She is the Poochie of the group.
They bring her back
okay,
for
good.
They bring both of them are in the second OVA, so like you get best of both worlds. You're getting like this weird. You're getting this weird relationship where these two characters don't actually exist in the same universe normally, but now
is she another like hyper competent woman or something?
Yeah. Well, she has her own quirks though. Like she's afraid of like anything horror, like anything scary. She like immediately passes out. Has to get carried by the big guy.
Oh yeah. The transportation expert. Yeah. Perfect job for him.
By the way, one of my favorite pieces of animation in the show is in episode 2 when the big bomb thing is just sitting there and it's like covered in birds and then it starts opening up and they all fly away. Something about that made me laugh really hard. But yeah, again, we could go on literally forever talking about every fucking piece of animation because I mean, but that's what's so great about these old OVAs is that like when they put that level of detail in it, it's like you could watch this over and over again and you'll probably notice things you didn't or, you know, just it won't get boring because it's just so nice to look at.
I'm cheating a little by referencing the movie again, but like, how about the insane like final battle with like the X-Zero or whatever gone rogue versus like the 98.
Oh, yeah.
And
the
like
part where
shit,
like
the fact that
when
she
gets
out
onto
of the
its
mech,
head,
holy
and
fuck,
then
Noah.
the visor opens up and it throws her back.
Yeah. But like the practicality and like the set piece of like being hanging off the edge, like she wrapped a wire from Alphonse around the like the X-Zero or whatever, is hanging off. She gets out, climbs over it like in fucking Uncharted 2 at the very beginning of the game or whatever, and like unloads 1,000,000 shotgun shells in like the control unit at the back of the head. And like I love that like they give us the detail. Like she specifically asked like, where's the control module, so that we know like what she's doing right now is for a specific purpose to like, you know, turn off like its RAM is active. There's a whole sequence like we've already pulled its CPU. It's operating just on RAM, so if you power it down, like it'll be shut down, which is logically that makes sense computer science wise. And then this whole grapple scene, she climbs up on him and blasts him. Oh my God, so I thought there was going to be a big dramatic moment where Alphonse falls into the seas tragically and she loses him, but no, it seems like he was saved, which is wonderful. And
it's also
but that scene was so amazing.
Yeah, it's perfect that she has to take it down herself. Like she doesn't even. At the end of it, it's not her robot that takes down the other robot.
It's about the human spirit, not the individual weapon that wins the day. That's what it's all about, baby.
It's just the other weapon she used, a shotgun.
Yep. So good, so incredible. I guess I'll just say that like this battle happens like after the entire arc had fallen. I mean, a little bit fucking ridiculous that every person survived when they were all on there, but what can you do? It's fine. It's fine.
I love that nobody ever dies in Patlabor. The only person we even hear about having died is the guy from the movie.
Who dies before the actual
bad
plot.
Guy.
Right.
Yeah, he dies before the movie even begins. So it's like it can maintain, even though the movie is way more serious than the show, it still has a light and kind of brisk atmosphere. There's still plenty of humor in it. The scene where Azuma is arguing with the like police chief guy, and their faces are all like warped, and then it like cuts to just their badges, ranks,
like just their ranks. Yeah.
That's a very abstract scene, but I liked it. Or, there's another similar kind of face warping scene later on when, like, the Babel virus gets active or whatever, and we see the crazy... this is, like, the first trippy scene of the movie. That's freaked me out.
Where, like, just the words are, like, projected on his face, like the word Babel. Yeah, it's just crazy.
Very, very odd. I mean, it's almost... I'll say that it's, like, considering the level of, like, weirdness in moments like that, it's almost like the plot, like, wasn't keeping pace with like how freaked out I felt by like animating that way. I was like expecting like more bad things to happen because of how like uniquely horrifying some of the scenes like those were. But like, I mean, that's just an expectation being set, probably based on like my experience of like Angel's Egg and other Oshii works and stuff.
Right.
But I mean, I loved all those scenes. It got me so spooked. And then when the plot resolved relatively happily, I was like, oh Jesus, thank God. Did not see that one coming, but glad to get out of here with all our boys intact.
All right, so
does anybody have like parting thoughts or anything else you want to say?
I don't know if you want me to actually go through the timelines, because I know I never actually
don't bother. I'm gonna all right, here, we'll do this, and there you go, that'll go at the start.
Thank you.
Okay, sick. All right, parting thoughts. Right, now, hey, I'll just restate what I said before. This was great. Highly recommended. I think, it's true. If your brain hasn't developed enough, which I don't hold against you, if your brain has not developed enough to appreciate, something like Ghost in the Shell standalone complex that a lot of people tried and had difficulty with when they were young or whatever, then maybe don't watch it. I'd say if you're 18 or older, you should have no problem watching this if you pay a little bit of attention and just drink it in, boys.
I will say though, like, do not watch this if you're just expecting mecha action or just fun hijinks.
Not these OVA or movie.
It's funny. It's entertaining, but it's entertaining in a way that is not like very immediate. You definitely have to really think about what you're watching.
This show isn't like Ghost in the Shell, where like that has like weird concepts that are kind of hard to understand. I mean, there's a little bit, not really though. And like if you're not paying attention, you'll be like, "What? The puppeteer? AI? What? Ascending to another level of consciousness? Like what?" But this show is just like, there's going to be destruction, so we better stop the bad guy. For the most part. So, like, you don't need to, like, have your head to the fucking, books to understand all this.
But you do need to be somebody who can enjoy a show that's primary driving force is the comedy inherent in how wacky bureaucracy is and how the world is, low-key really dumb. And, like...
Are there people who don't have that ability? Are there people who don't? Oh, that was kind of a joke.
I mean, yeah, because this show, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is it's dry. It's dry comedy.
It is dry, no doubt.
It's not exciting. It's if you don't appreciate the level of detail that's in the animation, if you don't appreciate the fact that these characters, like, again, I think a lot of people who watch anime, they watch it because they want to spend time with characters. Like, they want characters they relate to, they can project onto, they can spend time with and have a relationship with. The pussy betas of the world,
you're saying, who have no real friends and no real development emotionally.
I mean,
get over it, you motherfuckers. You don't need to, watch
you don't need to go that far, but
no,
sure.
I'm going all the way. These are the guys who they just stopped watching Oshigabudokan and they're coming over to watch Patlabor. Patlabor, goddammit.
Oshigabudokan's a fine show.
Yeah, that's gonna lead to the downfall of society. Gonna fucking collapse. Collapse.
But yeah, if you want to watch anime because you want to like love, I thought these characters were great and lovable in their own right, but you're not going to get like big emotional character scenes where there's interpersonal drama or like these like super feelsy moments. It's a dry comedic very wry take on society, and
True.
You know, it's more about what it does to your brain. It tickles you. It makes you think a little bit.
To that end,
yeah.
you know, I'm an aged, elderly, decrepit gentleman now. I developed a wide palette of like food. For example, one thing I love sharp-ass cheddar. I love super fucking sharp cheese, man. So when I see sharp cheese, I just think, that's delicious. That's obviously the best thing in the world. I want it. And this show is like a really sharp cheddar. I guess there are people out there who don't like sharp cheddar because they're idiots. But if you do appreciate things that are good, then you will love this show. I guarantee it, because it's just so good. It's just such a joy to just behold. And not even for somebody like me. You shouldn't like really overthink this show too much, because I feel like I understand like the kind of intellectual level they're going for, and I'm meeting them at that level and having a great time by doing so. And it's very wonderful all around.
Hero, any parting thoughts?
Nothing that I haven't already said in my video, I guess.
Go
OVA,
watch that video, people, if you haven't watched it yet, and subscribe to Hero's channel, because your videos are good.
They are.
And,
Thank you.
No doubt about it.
They're currently coming out at a rate of about one a year, but
almost
Hey,
two,
but you know
be
what?
sub
They'll
for the
be
next time one comes out.
almost
slow
every 2 years,
and
maybe.
steady.
But yeah,
That's about Final Fantasy release date levels.
yeah. The OVA
was
and
it
movie
2 years
are like,
between the Devilman and that video?
I think it's like
hell.
a year and a half. Yeah.
Oh my god, it's been so long since Devilman. You're right. No, it has been 2 years, because it would have been January when Crybaby came out. So.
Yeah. Oh, actually, I took a while to come out with it though. I think it was like April that I actually like finished that video. It just like burned me out.
No,
like 2 years.
You put out the Devilman video right before Crybaby came out.
Oh yeah.
I remember.
I
It
did
just came out before mine.
But I did the first Devilman video, then I did the Crybaby video after that though.
Okay, yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't remember that video. No one does. It has like 20,000 views after 2 years.
I'm
Hey,
sure
when
I
you're making
watched it, but there were
quality
a
shit.
lot of Crybaby videos.
Yes, there
yeah.
sure were.
Yeah.
But do watch the other one, the Devilman Your Next Favorite, was highly informative and because you know I'm a big fan of the manga, but I didn't know much about all the different anime incarnations, so that's a good way to learn about that too.
Yeah.
And of course, most of your videos are about video games, and those are also good. So.
Yeah. Thanks.
Hard
Anyway.
agree, hard recommendation all around. Check him out, everybody.
Yeah, so that's it for this podcast. Stick around on the channel for when we get back to covering seasonal shows. We're probably going to have to make a video just asking people like what they most want us to cover, because I haven't been able to like pick a clear winner of like which shows
You
we
know,
should do.
let's confer on this. I mean, I think that the people want reviewers. They want fucking whatever the fuck reviewers, and I think they want I'm getting some interest in that show that you watched that I did not.
Kyoko Suidi, yeah.
Yeah,
That one's one of the most popular of the season,
Yeah.
so it would... But I don't know how much there will be to say about it. I have to... It'll probably help to actually continue watching a bunch of the shows
That would help.
and then like figure out through that. But yeah, so we'll be covering seasonals as we usually do. We'll also eventually start talking about Future Boy Conan or something, if people are down for that, I guess.
I'm looking forward
That's it then. Bye.
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 KHANTENT!